The aid agency Oxfam is denying it covered up allegations that some of its senior employees paid for sex in Haiti. This apparently happened shortly after the earthquake that took place in 2010. An investigation by the Times newspaper in London says a confidential Oxfam report found that, quote, children may have been among those sexually exploited by aid workers. Important to point out here, CNN has not independently reviewed the report, and the aid agency says sexual allegations involving minors were never proven. Let's bring in CNN's Aaron McLaughlin following the story live for us in our London bureau this hour. Aaron, good to have you. First, let's start with the backstory. When these crimes allegedly happened and what looks to be a cover-up.
Hi, George. Well, I think it's important to remind our viewers what Haiti was like back following that devastating 2010 earthquake. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Hundreds of thousands of people were injured. 1.5 million people displaced. It was truly a country devastated. Oxfam was one of the major aid organizations that was supposed to be there to help. Now allegations that it engaged in a cover-up. Allegations coming to light now due to an investigation by the London Times, which obtained a copy of an internal Oxfam report that had not been made public. Inside that report, detailing sexual misconduct by Oxfam employees, including the country director, allegations that those employees had hired female prostitutes, not ruling out the possibility that some of those prostitutes could, in fact, have been minors. Now, at the time, Oxfam was forthcoming that it was investigating employee misconduct, but it did not go into detail with Haitian authorities or with its trustees the nature of that misconduct, the details of the investigation. And now we are hearing from some of those trustees, the Department for International Development here in the UK, putting out a statement that reads in part, "We often work with organizations in chaotic and difficult circumstances. If wrongdoing, abuse, fraud, or criminal activity occur, we need to know about it immediately in full. The way this appalling abuse of vulnerable people was dealt with raises serious questions that Oxfam must answer." The Department for International Development saying that it is now reviewing its partnership, its current work with Oxfam as well. We're also hearing from the Haiti ambassador to the UK express his outrage. Take a listen.
It is clear it's a cover-up case. The fact that those folks were allowed to leave the country without any punishment, without even informing relevant Haitian authorities about that, it was a cover-up. And now, the fact that they did such a crime, or there was such a cover-up, now we are wondering how many of those cases are still being happening in Haiti.
Now, Oxfam says 7 of its employees were either dismissed or fired in the wake of its own internal investigation. But now the London Times is reporting that some of those employees actually went on to work with other aid organizations in other countries. And those aid organizations were not made aware by Oxfam of this internal investigation, George.
And those details, Aaron, important here because given the allegations here, some agencies may have taken different steps. Had they known those critical details, there's a lot certainly to look into with this. It also leads to that age-old question, the cover-up, which is worse, the cover-up or the crime? How has Oxfam responded to these accusations?
Well, Oxfam certainly not excusing the employees' behavior, but it is denying that a cover-up took place. Take a listen to what the Oxfam CEO had to say.
Well, I think at the time, Oxfam took serious and immediate action, and it was open. Oxfam was actually proactive in going to the British public, the Department for International Development and the Charity Commission to explain that there had been serious misconduct and we'd taken action. What Oxfam didn't do was describe the detailed nature of the offences, which included the use of prostitution.
Now, Oxfam says it did receive legal advice that, given the situation on the ground in Haiti at the time, that nothing would have happened had they reported those employees to Haitian authorities. It does acknowledge, though, that it could have done more to inform other NGOs of that employee misconduct, putting out a statement saying, while there is nothing we can do to stop individuals falsifying references or getting colleagues to provide a reference in a personal capacity, there's clearly more that can and should be done to ensure that individuals who are found to be guilty of sexual misconduct do not continue to find work in the sector. George.
There are some serious questions raised in this report. Aaron McLaughlin live for us. Thank you for the reporting on it. Now let's get some context with Andrew McLeod. Andrew is a visiting professor at King's College in London. He was a senior official with the United Nations and is now an advisor for Hear Their Cries, an organization fighting sexual exploitation. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us to talk about this very important story. You recently wrote about this controversy, more specifically the part about the report that states that children may have been among those sexually exploited. And the aid agency, of course, they say that that was never proven. But let's talk about that first, because you say this is a growing problem that, quite frankly, is not being handled effectively enough.
That's right. The National Crime Authority in the United Kingdom has been warning since 1999 that as we crack down on pedophiles in the developed world, the predatory pedophiles are now going to the developing world to get access to children. It's disgusting, but you can see the truth in that. Worse, the National Crime Authority has been warning that predatory pedophiles' chosen methodology to get access to children is to join a children's charity. Again, disgusting, but easy to believe. And that means that charities have a higher than normal obligation to ensure that they do everything they possibly can in training, prevention, detection, and critically, prosecution. When I heard that clip from the Oxfam man that you just put on, we took immediate and serious action. Are you kidding me? If these were adult prostitutes, you've broken the law in Haiti, so you should have reported them to the police. If any of these prostitutes were underage, then these British aid workers have actually broken British sex tourism laws and should be held to account in front of the courts here. And if Oxfam has turned a blind eye, question whether senior executives in Oxfam have broken the child sex tourism laws here in the United Kingdom for aiding and abetting people by turning a willful blind eye.
Well, here's the thing. So, you know, we heard that response just a moment ago from the chief executive that they took serious and immediate action. But, you know, the question is raised, the uncertainty with that. Many of these aid workers were allowed to move on to other aid organizations with seemingly spotless records.
Let's be really clear here. A lot of your viewers are good-hearted people who have put their hands in their pockets, donated money to charity, and will be feeling sick to the stomach to think that their money is going to fund pedophilia or sexual abuse. And it is. How can Oxfam possibly say that they took serious and immediate action but didn't tell the police, didn't ask for an investigation, either in Haiti or in the United Kingdom? Oxfam are right to say that it was not proved that any of the prostitutes were underage, but it wasn't disproved that they were underage either. So British crime authorities should have a close investigation. But there is a bigger issue here. We know in the aid industry that we, and I'm a former aid worker, have the responsibility to look after people on the ground. We are sent there to help. There is a higher than normal obligation on us. And what this should be is a warning to all charities and the United Nations that we need to do more in training, prevention, detection and prosecution. Now, many aid workers have blown the whistles over the years and they have all been chastised. I spoke to Ambassador Haley's office late last year and we recognised that we actually need at the international level a new independent whistleblowing mechanism. The Secretary of State for International Development in the United Kingdom here, Priti Patel, agreed that the United Kingdom will host a meeting in the first half of this year to create a new independent whistleblowing mechanism. Unfortunately, Ms Patel is no longer the Secretary of State for DFID. There is a new Secretary of State. So I'm wondering, between the Secretary of State for International Development here in the UK and Ambassador Haley's office in the United States, can we please create this new whistleblowing mechanism so good aid workers who are really doing their best for people can report on this horrendous acts of both adult and child sexual abuse that is rife within the UN?
And Andrew, look, to the credit of the many people that you've worked with, it is important to point out there are many good men and women doing good work around the world, but this report certainly makes one take pause. When you went out to write on this, you compared this to what you saw happening in the Catholic Church.
That's indeed. When I was a young lawyer, I acted on some of the Catholic Church insurance in the early 1990s. Sorry, the Catholic Church litigation in the early 1990s. And I have to say, a lot of the responses are very similar. Minimise, deny, shoot the messenger. But I understand that. For many Catholics in the 1970s and 80s, it was very difficult for them to understand that this child abuse was happening in the organisation that they loved and worked for. And many aid workers are finding it very difficult to comprehend that a number of people that they work with, that are their friends, are actually committing these heinous acts. The vast majority of aid workers are doing great, vital and very important work, but the truth is, unless we stamp down hard now on adult and child sexual abuse in the aid industry, people will stop donating and should stop donating, money will stop flowing. And I now ask you this, Angelina Jolie and Emma Watson and David Beckham are very big ambassadors for UN agencies and big international charities, very passionate in the Me Too movement. I call on Angelina Jolie and Emma Watson to suspend their ambassadorial roles in the United Nations, strengthen their activity in the Me Too movement, and work with the UN to stamp out this scourge, ensure that all major charities and all UN agencies report all accusations to the police forces, and until there is a new protocol of reporting these people to the police, Angelina Jolie and Emma Watson should suspend their ambassadorial roles with the UN. They are ambassadors for organisations that are not doing all they can in the prevention, detection and prosecution of adult and child sexual abuse.
Andrew, somehow I believe we'll be talking more about this story. Thank you so much for taking time and giving us your perspective, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Thank you, George.